Ozzie Knezovich with Sheriff's Report. We have in studio with me today Ian Robertson. And Ian and I have worked on many things within the Spokane area for many, many years now. And Ian and I have been meeting every Friday morning at 9 o'clock for about the last month and a half now. And those meetings spawned out of a video that I did asking our 3rd District representatives and Senator Marcus Riccelli and Tim Ormsby and Andy Billig, along with the Spokane City Council and some activists in our area, where their voice is concerning the violence in our community. What are they doing? More specifically, I get asked all the time, Ian, Sheriff, who should we talk to? Who should we talk to concerning all this violence, all the crime, all the homelessness? And in the video that I produced, I said, these are the people you need to talk to, because it is their policies. It is their decisions.
Yeah.
On the activist side, Curtis Robinson, Walter Kendrick, Sandra Williams, they are the ones that are pushing these extreme policies that have caused the crime in our community. And Ian, you know as well as I do, based on what you're seeing, what you're doing, and the very multitude of organizations you're involved with, this community is tired. It's tired of the violence. It's tired of the disarray, the chaos. And they want solutions and they want answers.
I think you hit the word solutions. 80% of the people really want solutions, be able to get along with their life and enjoy the good things that we have in Spokane. And, there's extremists on both sides. But here we are, and we are looking for solutions. Now, you put me on the spot at one of those meetings and said, what is the faith? Or somebody asked a question, and then you responded. The question was, what's the faith community doing about solutions to homelessness at that particular time? And you just looked right at me and said, okay, we got a great-grandfather who's been in this, involved with this, let him talk. So yes, we're talking about solution. But you just got back from a conference in London, training there, law enforcement. What did you learn?
Yes, you're correct. Last month, I spent the majority of last month in Scotland and England at training in leadership in criminal counterterrorism, and we met with the 5 countries that have bonded together around the globe. That's Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the UK, and the United States, to fight terrorism, to keep an eye on terrorism, to prepare our communities and our nations to counter the terrorism. And Ian, one of the things I learned most specifically, most graphically, and the one that concerned me the most, was just how devastating to our country and to our communities, and quite frankly, the world, our debacle of leaving Afghanistan truly was. Because while we were there, we had the ability to disrupt terrorism across the world. We lost that ability, and it is projected that terrorism will start hitting our streets.
You mentioned Afghanistan. I understand that this new government, terrorists in Afghanistan, on Mother's Day came out with something unbelievable.
They did, and it was during the training time that Mother's Day happened, and it was highlighted that on that day, the Taliban basically erased all rights for women in Afghanistan.
Say that one more time.
They erased all of the rights for women in Afghanistan.
And they chose Mother's Day to do it?
Very symbolic to the West. They sent a very symbolic message to the West, and they did it on Mother's Day.
So terrorism. How does this relate to Spokane?
Spokane, we are 90 miles from a border. We are the largest metropolitan area between Seattle, St. Paul, north of Denver, Salt Lake, and we have had terrorist activity in our community, both at the international level and at the domestic level. And at the domestic level, everybody in our current government system focuses on the extremism and the domestic terrorism of the extreme right. They totally ignore the extremism and the domestic terrorism that the far left creates and poses to this community. We need to stop using politics in the way we frame the threats to our community.
Yeah.
Because the threats to our community, they cut across all political boundaries. Extremists don't care about you, the community. They care about their agendas, their dogma, their ideology, and they are willing to tear everything down.
Now, this weekend, we saw another rise of crime in schools, especially there. Mass murders, Texas, a week or so ago. Again, this weekend, the numbers are high, not only in this country, but in others. Talk about violence in the schools, will you? And trying to get the police sort of arms locked where they can't operate in schools. What's the position back in Spokane?
In Spokane County, our schools and the sheriff's office have a great relationship. We have school resource deputies into high schools. They also work with the elementaries and the middle schools. This push from the extreme left to take officers out of schools is the most stupid concept I have ever heard uttered by a political entity or an activist. Ian, I was a school resource officer. I started the program for the Rock Springs Police Department when I was a patrolman there. I worked in the schools there. I had one high school and 2 junior highs. The reason we put a school resource officer into high school in 1994 was gang violence. Believe it or not, Little Rock Springs, Wyoming, and we had a major gang issue. And we put an officer in, me, but the so-called bad kids, I had more respect from them than I did the so-called good kids. And those so-called bad kids would bring me information because they really didn't want the drugs on campus. They really didn't want the chaos. They wanted some stability because the only place in their lives that they truly felt safe, they truly had stability, and they knew that somebody cared about them was at school. And they didn't want that chaos at school because they had the chaos outside of school. These so-called bad kids, some of them come from really bad homes.
Yeah.
They come from homes where in the summers when I wasn't working in the school, I worked the streets, graveyard.
Yeah.
Some of the kids I dealt with at the school, I would deal with out on the streets. And folks, not in the manner you're thinking about them creating crime. It's more like this. I get a report of a domestic disturbance, so I roll into the area. I see out in the van the 6 kids of a family. I know them by name.
Yeah.
These kids are sleeping in the van because mom and dad are battling it out in the house. It's 2:30 in the morning. That's what those kids live with. And the only place they felt safe was at school. And you want to take the safety valves away from them? You take a look what's going on in District 81 in this community, and you tell me that those kids feel safe, that is a safe zone for them to get away from the pressures and the chaos of their lives. You wouldn't have the FBI investigating if it was safe for those kids.
So you're saying the FBI is investigating schools in Spokane County today?
District 81 is under review.
Spokane.
Spokane.
Okay. And
Why? Because they have failed their children.
okay, the problems is not so much the gangs as the silence of the friends and people not taking a stand and helping those children where they need help in their relationships.
No, I'll tell you where the true failure is, Ian. The true failure is you, I, every community member in this county, because we haven't stepped up and we haven't demanded that these draconian policies that keep our schools in chaos be removed. It is our fault. These kids rely on leadership in their communities to do the right thing for them. They rely on the parents of this community to do the right thing for them. And it's time that people like you and I, the average, everyday working citizen of this community, to step up and start helping. Mentoring is a huge thing right now because these kids, they need help. You and I have talked about this for a decade.
Yes.
You know, we have talked about this for a decade. And you're right. I did call you out one day. I said, where are the churches? Where are the faith groups? Where are they when they're needed the most? They don't have a voice. They don't vote. They don't take this stuff serious. Where are you? Are you willing to sell another generation down the road? Are you willing to step up and start helping to save these kids? And that's where I am so angry. This isn't just some kind of, you know, the left wants to paint this as, oh, he's just preparing for his next political office somewhere down the road. No, this is extreme anger at a system that is failing our children and letting them die. These are politicians that are causing and setting policy that are killing our kids and allowing our kids to kill each other. When do we step up and when do we put an end to it? And why do we keep electing these same politicians time and time again that set these draconian policies that are killing our community?
We'll talk about solutions, or I'll ask questions about solutions in a moment. But first, what about this area of drugs and pills? Now, marijuana is allowed, but there's new strains coming out. And really, is it just downtown Spokane where the problem is, or?
It's statewide, you know? And quite frankly, again, this is another self-inflicted wound. Because about a decade ago, we thought it'd be really good to legalize marijuana. And why did we do it? Because you were sold a bill of goods that, oh, the jails are just cram-packed full of people arrested for, you know, minor possession of marijuana. Not true, never was true. And the next thing you were told was, if you legalize it, the drug cartels will go away. The illegal marijuana will go away. Why is it then now that our governor wants to form a task force to go after the illegal marijuana grows? The cartel is stronger than ever, and it's backed by forces out of China. Why is that happening? And, you know, what did we do to ourselves? We sent a message to our kids that drugs are okay. Drugs are safe. And we wonder why they're experimenting with more and more. And now there's talking of making hallucinogens legal.
Right now, marijuana, they said, you know, was rather harmless there, but there's new strains and it's a lot more powerful today than it was 10 years, 20 years ago. Is that correct?
This is not the marijuana of your day.
Tell us me more about it. I'm ignorant on that.
The THC levels of today's marijuana are tenfold. And then you wonder why, parents, if your kids are vaping, and you know, we've had a string of robberies, kids selling vape pens and getting robbed for them, or breaking into stores to steal them. Why are they doing it? Because they're vaping marijuana oil. And the THC levels in marijuana oil are even further enhanced. And in this enhanced THC levels are causing schizophrenic breaks in our kids. Because the younger you start smoking marijuana, the more damage it does to the brain. And they are having schizophrenic breaks, and they are not recovering. How do I know this? Because by state mandate, we have to have CIT training every year, 2 hours a year, and one of those classes that we had to sit and listen to, and CIT training is how to deal with people that are suffering mental crisis. A psychologist gave the class, and he outlined exactly what we are seeing out on the streets. We are seeing more and more kids suffer schizophrenic breaks, and they are not recovering.
You're talking, Sheriff, about permanent brain damage to our kids the younger they get involved. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am.
Expand on that.
There's not much more to expand on it. I mean, the younger you start smoking marijuana. Oh, by the way, Ian, do you know we've been committing a social faux pas by using the word marijuana, because our state Supreme Court has deemed it that is racist. So using the term marijuana is racist. So we should, in order to be politically correct, we should be using the word cannabis. I just learned that one too in a briefing Monday, because we just changed all our policies, took the word marijuana out and inserted cannabis.
So we just use whatever word and interpret any word the way we want it to. It's just everybody does his own interpretation in his own idea, in his own way.
Well, you can deem everything is racial anymore. Every problem that we have, according to activists, the term marijuana, highly racist.
Okay, let me talk about, I'll ask a question about solutions. That's what we're talking about. And first, I have to confess that we, the church, have been so divided for hundreds, thousands of years, arguing about, how many angels can do this and all that kind of stuff, instead of coming together and saying there are some things that don't change. There are some standards, living standards, moral standards that don't change, and let's work on those.
You're absolutely right. And one thing that you've all forgotten is the greatest commandment ever given is love one another. All right? You want to cure this school violence, then you need to start teaching kids to love each other again, to value human life. I'm telling you, Ian, people think I'm just bloviating when I say that when I was in high school, I could walk down the hall of my high school carrying a gun because there was a gun range in the basement of the high school. Okay? We had guns outside in the gun racks during hunting season. None of those guns ever walked into that school and killed anyone, because it would have been considered the greatest act of cowardice ever to shoot somebody unarmed, especially children. When are we going to get back to teaching our children that every human life is sacred, every human life has value, and if you have a bad day, it doesn't give you the right to go and kill other people? They always say, well, they were bullied. Well, the minute that you walk out, if you're the one that was bullied, and take a gun and you take it to an elementary school and you start killing children, you are the biggest coward and biggest bully that has ever existed. You have become what you say you hate. When are you going to start? When are we? When is society going to take us back to the values that made us a great nation rather than destroy every set of those values and drag us into a moral pit where our children think it's okay to kill each other?
You know, I'm going to admit to the sheriff that when I was in high school in Edinburgh, Scotland, we had a shooting range there too, and I had to be a marksman back in those days. But again, I can't agree with you more of what we're saying, that we need to get back. You know, we're making a start in Spokane Valley with the PACE program. I'm teaching moral values in the schools. The teachers love it. September, character quality of the month, respect. October, character quality of the month, responsibility. November, citizenship, and so forth, teaching these values that has been forgotten.
I've written essays for the PACE program concerning certain of those values.
Yes.
I've gone to the PACE functions, and it is high quality, but it needs reinforcement. It needs reinforcement in the families. I think we should be teaching those same principles not just to the kids, but to the parents. Because some of the actions I've seen out of our parents in the last 2 years, we wonder why our kids act the way they do. They're watching us. They're watching us destroy each other because of our political leanings. They're watching that we can't come and get the solutions necessary to protect them. And they're watching us do it in such a way that we are willing to destroy other people in order to get our way. You wonder why our kids are the way they are? Take a look in the mirror.
So you're saying the older generations, that includes me,
All
and
of us
those
are guilty.
all of us, grandparents, great-grandparents, parents, and all of it, need to set a better example.
We do.
And take a stand for what is right of solutions to the challenges we're facing today with our children.
Yeah. Don't bring the problem anymore. We all know what the problem is. Let's start looking at the solutions and come with this in mind. The group that we're meeting with, Ian, every Friday morning, 9 o'clock, the group we're meeting with, you know as well as I do, has people from the left to the right and everything in between. And do we agree on 100% of everything? We have some very interesting discussions. But at the end, what is the glue that is holding us together? We want a safe community. We want to find the solution. And we're willing to do this. We're willing to go, you know, Ian, I can't get 100% to where you are, but I can get 80% to where you are, and I think we can do this much of what you just said.
Thank you. I thought I was asking the questions, but you're challenging me today to actually, I really do need to do that, to talk with others in the faith community. You know, we have it on our coins. In God we trust, and there is a higher law. You know, treating others the way we wanted to be treated ourselves. And if we love God and love His creation, Creator God, whether it's as a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim or a Buddhist or an atheist or whatever, to realize there are some higher values than the present government today, and that we have inalienable rights. I think that's in our Constitution somewhere, isn't it?
Well, you know, we speak about those rights, and we speak about, you know, in the Declaration of Independence, the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to go about their business, have a safe place to go to work, a safe place to raise their family, a safe place to recreate, a safe place to sit on the porch and be able to enjoy life. That's what everybody wants. But it is at such peril right now because of the extremes on both the right and the left trying to tear this country apart based on their dogma and their ideologies. And folks, there are actually people out there trying to cause a civil war in this nation.
Yeah.
They are actually trying to do it, both on the left and the right. And the only way that is going to change is when you and the 80% in the middle say enough is enough, because if they are ever successful in trying to get this civil war, if they are ever successful in dragging us down that pit, you will never have what you have today. You will never regain the freedoms that you have today, because it was a very special mix of people. Because I've heard them. I've heard the left and the right talk about time for a revolution, time for a revolution. I know of one revolution in the history of the world that turned out right. And the only reason it turned out right is you had a special mix of people that did it. And they were not interested in power. They were interested in freedom. Freedom for all. George Washington was offered to be king. He said, no way. We didn't do this to have another dictator. We did this to have freedom. Everything hangs in the balance. And if you keep allowing these extremes on the left and the right to push the narrative, you will lose it all.
You know, I read this morning a promise from the good book, 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5. The purpose of my instructions is that all believers would be filled with love. We're there. That comes from a pure heart, a clear conscience, and genuine faith. And I tell you, if we started with that, to realize that we're all created, life is sacred, and work together on that, I believe we're at a place in Spokane, and I've seen a number of things right now going on. That march in the park on Saturday there, a new radio series that's just started, 2 mornings a week, and those things, and a realization that we have to wake up now, and carrying on saying, well, at least we're not as bad as Portland, or we're not as bad as Seattle. God help us there.
We don't want to even get there. We do not want to even see it, but I will tell you, you have political ideology in this community that is dragging you there. They are setting the same principles, same policies that took Seattle and Portland to where they are right now. And, you know, you talk about Scripture. The Savior looked at Peter and said, do you love me? He said, yeah, Lord, I do. And the Lord went, Peter, do you love me? And he went, okay, yeah, Lord, I do. And a third time the Savior said, Peter, do you love me? And Peter was very worried and upset, and, you know, it hurt him to have the Savior ask him, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know it's that.
Yeah.
Feed my sheep. Feed my lambs. What was the Savior saying? Take care of people.
Yes.
The Lord asked once, what's the greatest law? Love God with all your heart, mind, and spirit. He said, there's one greater.
Love your neighbor as yourself. Yes.
It is time for simple principles. And if you're not religious, folks, principles work the same way.
Yeah.
You don't have to attach it to a religion. It's very simple. Treat people with respect, treat people with love.
Yeah.
You know, and the worst part is, all these activists use those tools. All these extremes use the same tools that we just talked about to lead people into a pit.
Right. And you know, that goes back to Abraham, who is respected not just by Christians, but also by Jews, by Muslims, and other people there. A man of faith there. And his promise was God to be a blessing to all nations, not convert everybody, not make everybody think the same way as I think, but that they might have that same freedom to be a blessing to others. And that's the thing there, where we want to actually be a blessing to those that are hurting in our community. Now, let me just change this to the homeless a little bit now, because you made a statement to me, to us years ago there. You know, we're dealing with the problem of mental health and the problems of addiction there, and those need to be dealt with together. I think we all agreed on that. And then there was the people with mental challenges there, divorce and all the problems there. But the big problem was the people who wanted to be homeless. I think I remember you talking about that there. And perhaps that was expanded because of so many people who were just playing to that and the amounts of, this Freddie the freeloader attitude, all the free stuff that's being provided by the government, and I must say,
handout.
with the churches and
A handout.
nonprofit organizations.
A handout. That's what we've been doing, a handout. We're not doing a hand up. The mental health aspect, that's policy decisions. That's state policy decision. Empty the state mental health institutions, empty them. Now they say they do that out of compassion.
Putting them
Then-
on the street, compassion?
Well, they transition them into halfway houses. And when they fill out the halfway house, you'd think that, all right, they're not ready for this level of treatment. Where you'd think that they'd send back to the institution to get restabilized, work, and try to get that transition back.
It's not
No,
working.
They kick
90
them straight to the street. And now you tell me that that's compassionate. Oh, you can't handle living in the group homes. We're going to put you on the street and you're going to be homeless and you're going to have mental health issues. That's compassionate. So this whole thing was based on compassion, which is truly the most despicable and heartless thing you can do to somebody that has a mental health issue, is take them out of a safe environment and push them to the streets where they become victims, and they also become suspects in crime because of their mental health issues. So where's the compassion here? If you really wanted this to work, if you truly, really wanted this policy that you've set to work, here's how it works, folks. You go from institution to halfway house. If you're successful at the halfway house, you get transitioned into a house of your own, but you still have a safety net around you. And once you're successful and you're working and everything's going good for you, then the safety net can still be there, but it's a little bit further out. But however, if you're not able to handle the halfway house, then you transition back to the institution to get more intense therapies.
Yes.
Get re-leveled, and then try it again. But you don't push people to the street. That is a policy decision. It is a broken policy. It was, they say, done out of compassion, but it's truly the cruelest thing I've ever watched happen, to take somebody out of a safe environment and put them on the streets.
Give me the top two things that the faith community could do to solve this problem in Spokane County.
Get involved.
How?
You need to start having your voice heard. You need to start looking at what the problem is, and you need to start having serious conversations with policymakers. And if those policymakers will not change their draconian ways, then you need to find better leaders. That is the solution. If they want to keep going down these horrible paths, then there's only one way to stop that, and that is to find a new leader, new elected officials. Here's the problem with their leadership. They refuse to do the one thing that is key and vital to true leadership. Admit when you've made a mistake. Admit when you are on the wrong path. Ian, the biggest disaster in leadership is knowing you're on the wrong path and continuing there. Yeah. It takes great strength, great courage, because if you admit you're wrong, what happens? Well, you open yourself to attack by your enemies. However, I find the greatest strength there is to admit when you're wrong, because people will actually look and go, man, he had the courage to say he was wrong, and find a better way and change direction. Yeah. I make mistakes all the time. You have to have the courage to go, yeah, that was bad. I probably shouldn't have done that. We're going down the wrong direction. Let's stop this and find what the true solution is. But they refuse, because they see it as a sign of weakness to admit that you're wrong. And they are so wrong on so many issues. And if they will not change, the citizens, you have to take back your government. We forget that
Yeah.
this thing called, everybody talks about, the government, does not exist,
Yeah.
folks. The government is you. You send people to represent you. Ask yourself, are these people and their policies truly representative of you?
Yeah.
Of what you want to see for your community? Do you want your children to fear going to school? Well, if you don't want them to fear going to school, find different leadership, put it in action, and be engaged in your PTAs, be engaged in your school boards, and be engaged in setting the direction for your children. I had a discussion about 18 months ago during the height of all this controversy surrounding the schools and school boards and the things that they were doing, either with COVID or critical race theory and all these other things. Had a discussion with a group of people, and a father looked at me and went, Sheriff, I messed up. I've been asleep. I trusted my teachers to teach my kids. I trusted the principal to take care of my kids. I trusted the superintendent to do the right thing. I trusted my school board to make sure that we had proper values going on. I trusted, and I didn't see what they were actually doing. They have deviated from where my standards, our standards as a community, and he said, I failed my kids. And he did the right thing, though, in that he decided to engage.
I think what you're saying is we need to get involved, number one, in voting,
Yes.
being registered
Have
to
your
vote.
voice. That
to
is
have
your
a voice
voice.
in school boards, in neighborhood councils, where some of these policies and funding things actually come to the front. I remember when I came from the United Kingdom after World War II here, back in the 1940s, it was C.S. Lewis, spoke about willing slaves of the welfare state. And we saw the decline back then there, and unfortunately we have so many like that today, the challenge. But people of goodwill, people of faith, people who believe in the American dream need to be involved. I think that's the message you're trying to
They do.
say.
And I'm going to wrap it up with this. Here in about a month and a half, the ballots for the primaries will start arriving in your mailboxes.
Yeah.
The primary ballots will arrive in your mailboxes, I think, June 13th or July 13th. July 13th. I will tell you where the battle for your communities rests. It is not the general election. It is the primary election, because that is where these extreme ideologies win, because they figured it out. No one votes in the primary. The extremes have their core groups vote in the primaries, and you end up with extremists in government. If you want to change that dynamic, elect people that care about you, your family, and this community and this country, not the dogma of the extreme, not the ideologies of the extremes. You need to vote in the primary. And if tradition hits, we'll hit maybe 25-30% of this community will vote in the primary, and you will allow the extremes to win again. 25% to 30% are casting ballots, so that's setting the stage and the direction for 100%. You want your country back. You want your communities back. You want the dogma and the ideologies of the extremes gone. July 13th, when that ballot comes, sit down, fill it out, and send it back. Vote. Your voice, their founding fathers, Oh, I believe in the Constitution. I support the Constitution. No, you don't. Don't tell me all that, because you don't exercise the greatest key that your founders gave you, and you had your greatest key of self-determination, and that is your vote. Vote in the primary.
Thanks, Sheriff Ozzie and Chief Craig Meidel. We just appreciate both of you and the leadership that you continue to give throughout this county.
Thank you, Ian, for being on board today. Nice discussion. Folks, I hope you like the format. I've decided to start bringing people in that are engaged, that do want to find solutions, and I want to bring people in with different thought processes and you know, people that don't necessarily agree 100%, because the true solution is found between the discussion and the disagreement.
That's right.
We will find the solutions if we're willing to sit down and work it out and have the discussions. Folks, this is Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich. This has been the Sheriff's Report. Have a great day.